get to see. There we go. So that's the plan for the day. We are doing November 2024, paper 1, 2. That's our agenda. And let me see, this is working. Yeah, there we go. So that's what we're doing. I took the liberty to color these in. I was just waiting for the class to begin. Uh, yeah, I feel quite green and purple right now. It's February, March 25 release. I don't think so. I haven't gotten my hands on it just yet. From what I remember from previous years, that I used to get a hold of it just before the exams would come around. So that would be end of April, start of May is when you get to find it. So I think it's a good paper to keep in reserve for your just before your exam. And I'm pretty sure it gets out before your exam, which is on the 6th and I think 11th this year. So you should get it before the exam. Am I muted? Wait. Can you hear me? Was I muted? Sorry. Could you hear me perfectly? Yeah, okay. Sorry. Thank you, Michelle. Welcome. How are you doing? So yeah, so this is our paper for the day, paper 1, second variant of November 2024. And since we have obviously not enough time to attempt all the questions, I vary between the sessions. So last time around, we did a 5 marker, and then we attempted an 8 and a 12 marker. Today, I'll attempt a 2 and 3 marker so that we also get the feel of answering those. And then we will go into an 8, a 12 marker. So that will be section B. Remember, your paper 1 has 40 marks for you to score. Section A is 20 marks. Section B is 20 marks. You'll have 1 hour and 15 minutes to do it. Yes, I will be sharing the recordings. I definitely. So the way to divide up your time is to give 30 minutes to section A and 45 minutes for section B. And I recommend that you go in the sequence of the paper. Don't start with the 12 and 8 marker. You know, both sections are worth 20 marks. It's easier to score from 2, 3, and 5 markers than it is from 8 and 12 markers. So I would recommend that always do section A first and then go on to section B. So from this one, I've picked the first question here, which is from chapter 5, business stakeholders. And then there's question 6 here, which will focus on marketing. It's probably just this one. Can you see this one fine? Is this less blurry? I had zoomed out, perhaps that's why. Yeah, so it was just that paper. Let me see. So if I zoom in, maybe this becomes better. Yeah, there you go. That should be better, right? So so I'll be doing question 1, which is the first one here, and then I'll do question 6, 8, and 12 marker. Okay, so I brought these questions on separate slides so we can tackle them one by one. Again, things to remember. And again, you will see me talk about these words again and again and again. I keep referring back to it. And those words, we all know them by now. These are our friends. These are what guarantee us the marks: knowledge, application, analysis, and evaluation. Right? So different questions will have different marks associated with it. And as I go into each question, I'll tell you which one to look out for in each question. So this is the first one, question 1, part A, which starts with the command word of define. Okay. Anytime you see a command word defined, it will definitely be a 2-mark question. And in a 2-mark question, the examiner is looking for 2 points of knowledge from you. So that's the requirement. Nothing more. No need to go into application. No need to show how it changes the business. Just simply focus on the facts of that concept. Anything that you can say that you've read in your books as a definition you remember. And I have a little trick that works quite well, I believe. And that is that I want you to remember this term. I've created it. Ifufi, right? Ifufi. Now, what it stands for is that the first thing you got to do, since you need 2 parts of knowledge, remember, that's what you need to show. What you can do first is talk about a brief explanation about the concept. So explain what it is, a definition that you remember from your glossaries, or in just simple English, your best definition or description of that concept. That's something that you can think about. And that's definitely something you bring into a definition question. Then you can, the second point of knowledge that you need to have to score 2 marks, you can have any one of these 4 points. And what these are is that you can either think about a factor of that concept. The factor is something that came before the concept occurred. And when I say external stakeholders, a factor of stakeholders will be that the business would have taken loans from an external stakeholder. So it's the loan or it's the investment due to which there is an existence of an external stakeholder. So you can think about something that leads to this concept and bring that as the second point. You can talk about either its uses. So what in terms of external stakeholders, if you talk about, let's say, banks, why do you need the banks? Well, in order to get startup capital, in order to get expansion capital, for working capital. So any uses of that concept can be used as the second point of your defined answers. You could also use a formula if one exists. Obviously, there's no formula for external stakeholders, but if there was, let's say the question was on labor turnover, then the second point of it could be the formula itself. And then you could also bring in an example. And please bring in a business example and not a personal example. For example, recently there's a question, define the term opportunity cost. And a lot of students use the examples of saying, look, if something like, if I turn left, then the opportunity cost would be not turning right. So, something that simplistic is not what the examiner is looking for. They're looking for a business use of it. So in terms of opportunity cost, what I would say is that if a business decides to invest in machinery that is more capital intensive, then the opportunity cost would be the skills they would have gotten from the labor. Remember, that's the choice you're making, whether we go labor intensive or capital intensive. So make sure your examples are focused on how a business would use that concept rather than just a general. So the things to remember is that you definitely have to talk about the first point. You have to explain, give a definition, and that should get you the first mark of knowledge. And after that, it could be a combination of any one of these four. Think about a factor. If you can think about a factor, something that led to that concept, write that and move on. If you can't think of a factor, think about a use of it. If you can't think of a use, look for a formula. If there's no formula, then bring in an example. That should give you the 2 marks for knowledge that you need in a defined question. Yeah, exactly right, Michelle. What the knowledge depends on, what the concept depends on. So external stakeholders, why did the concept occur? Well, because you're liable to people who've invested money in it, given you loans, your supplier. So all of those reasons could be brought in here. Yeah. Let me do one here, right? So the first question here, which is define, you need 2 points of knowledge. So that's going to be my focus, knowledge 1 and knowledge 2. And the first should definitely be an explanation of what external stakeholders are, right? So we know that these are either people or organizations which are outside, right? You could also say that this is part of the external environment, and that would do the trick as well. And who are these people? Why are they called stakeholders? Because they have a direct interest in business operations or activities. So that in its simplest form is an explanation of what external stakeholders are. And the best thing to use here from the other 4 that we were looking at, factor, uses, formula, example, the best thing would be to talk about an example. I could say people like suppliers and customers are examples of external stakeholders, and that would definitely give me the 2 marks that I need here. So examples could be customers, banks, suppliers. Any 2 should do the trick here, right? In terms of factor, I could have said that these are, like I said, you may have taken a loan, so that's why external stakeholders exist. Uses, in order to make your product, you need a supplier. So the supply of raw material is where there's a use of an external stakeholder. obviously there's no formula for it. And then I also showed you how to use it with an example. No, Ali, there is no need for application in a 2-mark question. Remember, the command word will give you the biggest clue. And the command word here is define. They need us to tell them what the concept is. Not, they don't want you to tell them yet how a business would use it, because that's then tested in the 3-marker that follows this 2-marker. Okay? And yeah, you're welcome. And repeat the same process for all 2-markers. Okay. Yeah, Urva, perfect. That's perfect for 2-marker. Simple, short, and it ticks off all the things that we want to put in there. Okay. Right. So let's move on to the 3-marker, where the requirements sort of change a little bit, right? And the biggest clue again is always look at the marks. You know, it's 3 marks, and we also know that for 3 marks, they're asking you to explain. And this is very, very important to understand that this is not a define question. Okay. So there is no need to define the concept here. They want you to explain, and they've told you what they want you to explain. They want you to explain one way. Okay. So they don't want you to define, they want you to talk about a use of it. So what's one way we could do this, or one way we could do that? So putting in a definition here does not get you the marks for knowledge. The way that they've asked you to talk about, mentioning that, is what's going to get you the marks for knowledge. And here, the requirement is that you'll be given 1 mark for knowledge. So that's making sure that you talk about the right way. And then you'll be given 2 marks for application. So 2 layers, sort of like you need 3 sentences that combine to explain one way the aims of employees may impact on the decisions of a business, right? So what they want us to talk about really is that what is it that employees want, and what employees want, how does that impact the decisions of the business? So what they're asking you to first identify is what is the demand for employees from a business, right? And we know workers want financial rewards, they want non-financial rewards. So if I think about aims, right, I'm just gonna write a few down here. My answer hasn't started yet. Okay. So in terms of my aims, they want a fair wage, fair salary. They also want to be trained, so training is a part of it. They also want to make decisions, right? Decision making, worker participation. They also want to see growth, right? So talking about any one of these, it's what's going to get you the first mark of knowledge. So what I'm going to start by writing is that one aim of employees is, let's say, higher wages, right? Everybody wants more than what they're working for. That's just natural. That's human nature, right? So that's what yeah, you can talk about joining a trade union and the demand for it. Absolutely right. Any point you want to bring in it. But understand that this sentence is what you're going to get the knowledge mark for, not a definition. Okay. And then what you have to do is, whatever this situation is, explain how this then impacts a business decision. And that's going to be done over 2 layers of application. So first I'm going to write that workers may demand higher financial rewards. You know, change up your words, show the examiner your skills, higher financial rewards um, as a result of their appraisal. And this is just the first layer of application, right? Because I first have to identify what leads to a business decision, and what's leading to the business deciding something is that, look, we have to pay our workers more because they've worked hard, they worked for the company, so they must be rewarded. And when they must be rewarded, then how do you connect it to a business decision? This means that a higher wage cost or labor cost would result in lower profits, or you could say retained earnings for the company. right? So here I am connecting this part that the decision is to give them higher salaries because they've earned it after the appraisal. And how it impacts the business is that it will lead to lower profit or less money being retained in the company. That combination is what's going to get you your 3 marks for knowledge and application. So that's where my answer begins. Okay, so notice how that I haven't mentioned the word analysis at all here. So if you talk about a motivated workforce, that's the impact on the business. The question does not require that. The question just wants you to explain a situation where what employees wanted has led to, a certain decision for the business to make, whether to do it, give it or not. If it results in a motivated workforce, which then leads to more output or more quality output, that's the part of analysis that's used in a 5 and 8 and 12 marker, not in a 3 marker. So even if you talk about that, you're not going to be credited for it. They want to, application means create a scenario, show us a situation, tell us what changes in a business when this concept is applied. And the concept is obviously in the first line of knowledge. Does that make sense? All right, excellent. So, yeah, so this is what you do each time for 2 and 3 markers. Go through this process: 2 marks for knowledge for 2 marks, 1 mark for knowledge, and 2 for application for 3 marks. You make a combination like this, you should be okay. Right. So let's move on. This is good. Scott, my juice is flowing. I'm in the zone now, I think. Can I show the question again? This you mean? All of them together. So you mean this? Or you mean this? I think you mean this. Right? These two? The previous one. Okay, we eventually get there. Yeah, this is P1. I think it would. Yeah, you're welcome, Sean. Then keywords for 3 markers, second application. What do you mean keywords? The idea is to just show the change that a business faces. In terms of keywords, look, it depends on what situation you're trying to create. I'm not sure that there's something special to remember for that. Okay, now let's move on to our choice of the 8 marker, which is a marketing question. And by the time you finish your section A, you should have spent 30 minutes on it, which means that you will still have 45 minutes ideally for your section B. And when you get to section B, you reserve 15 minutes for your 8 mark question. You reserve 25 minutes for your 12 mark questions. That's the way I recommend to divide it up. And the way to go about answering your 8 mark question is, again, first look at the number of marks. If that's 8, then it's definitely going to have the command word of analyze. And that means we have to show analysis in this question. Um, uh, oh, Michelle, no, okay, no. Those are specifically for analysis because your application could be literally any situation that you're going to create in that question, right? So it's just as long as you're showing that businesses, processes changing, businesses, making decisions, that sort of thing must be shown in application. Right. So let's make our yeah. Yeah, so for all your 8 to 12 markers, I'm going to show you what are the things to remember, what's the structure to take, and the best thing you can do is practice as many as you can and make sure that you're maintaining the structure. So what I'm going to show you is what are the requirements of the examiner from you in an 8 mark question. And the moment I see 8 marks and the command word of analyze, I remind myself that you'll be rewarded 2 marks for knowledge, 2 for application, and 4 for analysis. Okay. And so let me just write those down. So you're getting 2 for knowledge, you're getting 2 for application, and you're getting 4 for analysis. Now, how that works is that in an 8 marker, they will mention how many points they want you to talk about. And if you read this question, which says, analyze 2 benefits to a business of customer relationship management. Okay. Now, the moment you see this, the first thing you got to do, and this is make this a habit. It always helps me to make sure that my structure is spot on. And that is that divide your question into knowledge, application, analysis. Knowledge is the concept that they're trying to test you on. So identify that. And the moment I see the question, I know that in terms of the concept, I'm being asked to talk about customer relationship management or customer relationship marketing. Remember CRM, making sure that your customers are happy, keeping in touch with them, giving them rewards, loyalty points, things like that. So the relationship between the business and the customer as a stakeholder, that being maintained, is what we call good CRM practices. And as long as I talk about that, I'll be getting my 2 marks for knowledge. Now, in an 8 marker, they don't give you a particular type of business. So they leave the situation open for you to create any business scenario, talk about anything here, or not talk about any specific business and just talk about it in business terms, which is what I'm going to do today. So any situation, any words you want to use to explain how a business would be using customer relationship management, what are its uses? And the analysis is always the impact on the business. So positive or negative, pros and cons, benefits, drawbacks. And in this question, they are very particularly asking you to talk about 2 benefits only, not 3, not 1, and not limitations or drawbacks. They want you to talk about the benefits of using CRM for any business, right? So what I do normally is then I sort of rephrase it in my mind and I say, okay, so if a business uses CRM, that's step 1. Are there any benefits to it? That's what I got to talk about. And how many? I've got to talk about 2 benefits. That means that when I take this requirement and I bring it here, I can turn into a formula. And the formula becomes that if I need 2 points, and for each point, I can show 1 mark for knowledge, 1 for application, and 2 for analysis. And if I do this twice, that means I've got 2 points, and each point will be a combination of 1 line or 1 statement of knowledge, at least 1 good piece of application, and then at least a few layers of analysis. Okay. So if you repeat your answer, if you so let's say both of your analysis are the same, or you end up using the same application, then obviously you won't be rewarded for that. So if let's say both your applications are the same in both points, then you'll only be rewarded for 1. If both your analysis are for example, in both your analysis, at the end of your point, you talk about, oh, there's an increase in sales and therefore increase in profit, you're only going to get rewarded for 1 of those. So pick and choose. Either talk about sales in one, profit in another one, cost in another one, output in a different one. So you need to have some variety in the way you end your analysis points. Okay. And I see some right knowledge points here. So, increase sales turnover, customer loyalty. You can push other products. They can become word of mouth promotion for the business. It's cheaper to retain an existing customer or please an existing customer rather than getting new customers to buy a product. So what you should be doing is that both your analysis points should be as different from one another as possible. Give the examiner the opportunity to see that you know the concept fully. And that way you give yourself the highest chance. And I'll show you the 2 points of knowledge as well. So yeah, loyalty points will increase repeat business. Repeat business will ultimately lead to higher sales and profit. That's perfectly fine. And what I could also say here is that you can use that customer data, which is second point of knowledge, is that you can use your customer data to understand what their requirements are, what their needs are, and according to that, provide a customized product which adds more value and that allows you to increase the market share of the business, right? Or I could say that it's always easier and less costly to sell more products to an existing customer because your marketing costs are reduced, and that way you gain marketing economies of scale, and that's another way to reduce your costs and have a positive impact on your profit. So make sure they are as different from one another as possible. Yes, Ali, you're absolutely right. Reduce promotion costs. That's perfectly good way to do your second point. Okay. So actually one more thing, another key hint that I could give to you is that, and remember this, that whenever you talk about your Come on, where's my pen? Whenever you have to finish your point and talk about analysis, there are four things that you can talk about. And as long as you talk about any one of those four, you will be okay. So, what I mean by that is in your analysis, talk about either the impact on the sales of the business, the cost of the business, the profit of the business, or the output of the business. So as long as you can talk about these, you know that you're talking about the eventual impact on the business, because this is how the business looks at itself. Are we making sales? Are we reducing costs? This and that. So as long as you can show that, the examiner knows, okay, you can tell us what impact the business faces, right? Um, so this covers both DNS and client. I think so. Let me just write my own as well. Then let's compare our answers. Yeah. Um, okay, so just want to recap. You need 2 points, each of one knowledge, one application, two analysis. And the way to process this is that, write one statement for analysis, write two statements for application, write three statements for analysis. So in a way, you're looking for at least 6 statements per point. 6 lines, 6 statements, bare minimum. That should do the trick for convincing the examiner that you have the right structure in your answer. Anything beyond that, obviously, is up to you to, make your answer that much better. And as long as you talk about these things at the end of your point, you will be right about the analysis of the business. So let's get into it. And you always start, remember there's 2 marks for knowledge. It's always a good idea to start with the definition. That should get you some marks for knowledge, not all. So here I would define what CRM is obviously keeping track or keeping them happy. And who am I talking about? I'm talking about your customers, particularly your, and actually this will only be your existing customers. Remember, CRM will only be there if there are already customers that buy your product. Okay. And as I always suggest, that within the first paragraph and straight after the definition, bring in some element of application. So I'll talk about that here, that why businesses use CRM. So businesses would use CRM to improve customer support, customer service, uh, conduct research, and just buying behavior predictions, buying behavior. You could talk about preferences here. So just lay out exactly why is it a business would have a process of CRM. Okay. And then you could change your paragraph. You could keep the same one. It's entirely up to you. I'll just keep it together here. And here, the first thing you got to mention is the benefit of a CRM to a business. And shall we talk about that? You're able to conduct research. It allows you to develop better products with more sales and market share. Let's talk about that. So you can use data to develop new or customized products. Right? So what in your mind, what you should be thinking is that this knowledge point that I've started with, this is what I have to prove throughout my point, that how will a business use CRM and how does that lead to a benefit to a business in terms of sales or profit. That's what you have to paint as a picture in your point here. And what I'm going to do here is that talk about what sort of data CRM provides to a business. And what we can say is that CRM provides complaints. It also provides feedback. What else? Suggestions, right? These are all things that you have stored within this system. And what this allows you to do is you can understand most demanded features of your product. Right? So what you have to do is create a scenario. And in an aid market, remember, they don't mention a particular type of business. So you have the freedom to be creative. And and notice how I'm not using a particular business's name here. You don't have, you can, you don't have to. So I'm just using the right terms, the right phrases to explain how CRM will be used in a business. And once I highlight that this is how it's being used, then I have to prove that, okay, if you have this, how does it lead to your new products being offered? And what I will mention here is that you can use it in the product development stage. Remember, there's a whole concept product development where you conduct research, and the research can be within the CRM system and the data that you have available. And that will allow you to create, let's say, an attractive product based on customer preferences, right? And one thing that I recommend is that do not show haste and don't be very, very quick to straight away talk about increase in sales and profit. The examiner wants you to show it to them layer by layer by layer. Often what students do is that they talk about application and then straight away the first thing they write is, so this increases the sales. There has to be a chain of consequences. And what you should have at minimum is 3 layers. What I'm doing here is, first I said, well, you're using it in product development, which is allowing you to create a product that people like. And when you can offer something that people like or customized, what it leads to is that you can charge a higher price for a product, or you can enter a niche market. This is my level 2. And once you have this higher price and you have entered a niche market, what it then leads to is higher profit margins, right? Or I could say, more revenue being earned by the business. So it's important to understand that you need these 3 layers. You need to talk about how it starts first, product development stage. What it allows you to do is charge a higher price. And then eventually, this is the final impact on the business, that they're making more profit. So again, notice how, as I mentioned earlier, you will see 1 layer for knowledge, 2 for application, 3 for analysis. This is the minimum you should do. And as long as you do that, the examiner is then thinking, okay, I've got the right detail. Then the rest of it is dependent on how correctly you're writing your answer. Yeah, so the immediate impact, not the long-term impact. They want to know what happens right away. What can you do, right? And if this was a 12-mark evaluation question, right, then I would say, okay, you can charge a higher price, but you don't know if your product is elastic or inelastic. Or I could say that, look, you are developing all of this, but you know that research comes at a cost, so there'll be a high cost of managing CRM. So have you thought about that? So all those discussions are part of evaluation. We reserve that for a 12-marker. But here, just the most immediate impact, that should do it. Everybody okay? Should I go on to the second one? I need more space. So now would be a good time to change paragraphs, obviously. And again, take the same sequence into your second point. Start with knowledge, mention, and remember, make sure, yeah, this, yes, this was just for 4 marks. Don't think about it like this. Think about it like this is to get full marks, right? If you do it for both, and you're okay. Okay. So other is that there is lower promotion cost. And remember, keep your points as different from one another as possible, right? And lower, explain this over 2 points of analysis, that since you are conducting sort of primary data is what you have direct from the workers, sorry, from the customers, you can use this to understand their choices, preferences, buying patterns, and as a result, push other products through direct selling. Remember, direct selling is you directly call your existing customer, you email them, you show up because you have their data, and it's always the cheaper method to do it. And the only difficult part with direct selling is to get the data. And here you have the data because you have a CRM system in place. Once you have this, then what it allows you to do is you can increase your product portfolio, or you could say that it helps you to increase your product sales. Right? When you do that, it gives you a sort of a competitive advantage. And by selling more, you could potentially look to increase your market share. And you're also reducing your cost due to economies of scale. Yeah, so both of your points, right? I'm also talking about reducing costs. I'm also talking about market dominance. You could have gone both ways. Just maybe you want to write both to make sure that your answer is solid. You could do both. Yeah, so if you want to talk about word of mouth promotion, then you can say in application that you can run loyalty programs, and those loyalty programs mean the customers are happier and they do word of mouth promotion for you, and that also reduces the cost of marketing that the business has to incur. That could also be fine. Yeah, again, spread cost across products. That means that there is less being spent and more being delivered. That's economies of scale. So that's what I mentioned there. Okay. Yeah, so risk is something that you use for evaluation. Remember, risk comes later. There's internal risk, external risk. Here, we want to stick to the most immediate impacts, and this should do it. Which point, Myra? The one I've written? Yeah, so what I'm trying to say here is that I want to show that how CRM leads to you spending less money on promotion. And that's what I mentioned here in my knowledge. And what I'm using is that in applications, what sort of data do you have that allows you to reduce your cost on marketing? So here I'm saying that, look, if you have CRM, it means you have customer data available to you, and you know what their choices are, what they like to buy, what are their feedbacks and suggestions. And what you can do is that take their numbers, take their WhatsApps, take their emails, whatever, and you can also push other products that you're selling through directly calling them. The difficult part is getting customer data. And here the customer has already provided you data. So the benefit of CRM is that you have already covered the most difficult part of direct selling. And once you've done that, then what you could do is by selling more, you can develop more products, you can sell more products. You obviously selling more means that your competition is getting left behind. That gives you competitive advantage, and that leads to more market share. At the same time, because you are selling directly through phones rather than putting up billboards and advertising on TV looking for new customers, there is less cost being incurred, as I mentioned here, for promotion. So that's what I've tried to do here. And this is just one of the ways to do it. And you could have talked about, as we were discussing, that what's the point earlier? Where to go? Yeah, market dominance. So that was also something we talked about. So it's just one of the ways to do it. Okay, very good. So everybody's okay with this. May I move on to the 12 marker now? The big final boss. Yeah, okay, let's go. So this is it. This is your 12 marker. And once again, the way to attempt yeah, I would say Ronaldo. Yeah, I think yesterday also just before Serie, I was watching some football videos on YouTube, and I think my stance has been confirmed more. than Ronaldo, for sure. I may lose half my clients as a result of this, but the truth has to be spoken. So coming back to the truth, which which is that we will have to also tempt a 12 marker. That's the truth of life right now. And I think Ronaldo is just he's the same age as me, so I can understand him. He often comes over for tea, so I can't be rude to him. So here we are with the 12 marker. And as you always do, look at the marks first, which is 12 here. Then look at the command word here, which is evaluate. And that should tell you, excuse me, and that should tell you that in this 12 marker, you need to show all four layers. You need to show knowledge, you need to show application, you need to show analysis, and additionally, you will have to show evaluation. Oh, wow. Wow. Meh. Get it? So you'll be given 2 marks for knowledge, you're given 2 for application, you'll be given 2 for analysis, and you'll be given 6 for evaluation. And that's basically what you need to do. The way to divide up your answer is that, let me make a fancy little diagram here, just because I feel like it. Um, Oops, wrong color. Where to go? Here you go. There you go. So divide your answer into 3 equal parts. Uh, that's not part. Let's say if this is your answer, your first point, so point 1, so I'm going to write here, or paragraph 1, paragraph 2, paragraph 3. Divided like this. Your first paragraph should be a combination of knowledge, application, analysis, and a tiny bit of evaluation. Okay. Now, the way to go about doing this is that, as we learned in an 8 marker, that 1 line for knowledge, 2 for application, 3 for analysis, that still applies. So let's say I do 1 line for knowledge, 2 for application, 3 for analysis, and just a couple of lines of evaluation. Your judgment, any limitation you can think of, any other factors you think might impact this. And that's something that will complete your first point. You do exactly the same for the second one. So 2 identical ones where we will just identify what we'll have to talk about here. And then in the end, you bring in your final evaluation. And this evaluation will have to be sort of a decision. So the question will be asking you something and you have to answer in either yes or no. And then you also talk about any other factors that you might feel are important for the concept that's being tested. So that's sort of a sequence that I recommend for a 12 marker, that you need all 4 elements in the first paragraph, and the last one only evaluation. Yeah, well, that's a good one. My tech team and my co-hosts, apparently people want to hear me say meh. So let's make a note of this. Maybe we can bring it out. Can you spell again? I didn't hear what we need at point. Okay, yeah. So that's done. First of all, cool name, my friend. Um, I wish I could say your last name, or wish I had a similar last name. But so what I'm trying to explain here is that for the first paragraph, and I'll show you how to do it as well. You need to continue with the same sequence that you did in an 8 marker. So mention a bit of knowledge, show your application, bring in your analysis, and at the end of that paragraph, what you weren't doing in an 8 marker, you will now do in a 12 marker, which is that provide a line or two of evaluation, which is give a judgment, talk about a limitation, talk about any other factor you think which might help you convince the examiner. So you bring that extra sprinkling of evaluation at the end of the first paragraph. You do exactly the same for the second one. And then, since this is an evaluate question and there's 6 marks for evaluation, then you'll also have to bring in a final evaluation towards the end to get that. That's what I was trying to explain. How many marks is a limited evaluation? So limited evaluation is 1. Semi-developed is sorry, 2. 2 is for limited. 4 is for semi-developed and a properly developed evaluation. And remember, when they say develop, they just want you to explore other things that might impact the concept that you're discussing. Okay, let me show how to connect that to the question. Okay, so once we know this is sort of the structure we got to take, and we know that we're given 6 marks per evaluation, we know that we'll have to focus more on it. And as we did for an 8 marker, divide up your question into knowledge, application, analysis, evaluation. And the way to do that is always the same. Pick out that concept that you think you can define in a single line business definition. That will be the knowledge marks. And here I can define what market research is. And often in a 12 marker, there will be two. I can also define what product development is. Remember, these are two concepts that we have read about and learned about in our syllabus. So anything you can define means that they're looking for this in terms of knowledge from you. We mentioned in part one. Uh, yeah, so try to keep your evaluation with full of variety, different points at different places. Remember, there's 6 marks to be given. They want to see the not only the breadth of your knowledge, the depth of it as well. So keep it mixed up. Yeah, so let me do each paragraph, and over there I'll explain how I'm bringing the evaluation here. How is it different in the first paragraph and in the last paragraph? Okay. So first, understand the process of, and remember, this brainstorming that you do before starting the answer is worth its weight in gold. It is spend 2 to 3 minutes more on this, but do spend the time, because then you know exactly the direction you're taking. Remember, this is like setting an objective for a business. So in terms of knowledge, as long as I talk about market research and product development, I'll be okay. Now, in a 12 marker, they will mention a particular type of business and just the name of a business. You will have to, this is where they're testing your ability, that do you even know businesses? And in this question, they are testing you on particularly a hotel. I need a thicker nib. Yeah, so a hotel is what we need to discuss for application. And this is probably the biggest, one of the biggest, I suppose, mistakes that students make is that when they start writing the 12 marker, they completely forget about the particular business that the examiner needs you to talk about, and they start simply defining the concept. Make sure that your application is properly evident in your answer. You're talking about hotels, which means you talk about valets, bellhops, room service, hotels, cleanliness, amenities, food, everything that you see in a hotel. That language must be brought into your answer. There's no longer workers, there's valet and concierge and room service and things like that. There's no longer facilities, there's like sports, there's swimming pool and things like that. So bring that language in your answer. That's very, very important. Okay. Now, analysis, the question saying, and let me read the question again. Market research is essential for effective product development in a hotel. So what they want you to prove is that, is it really essential for product development? So the question is asking me if a hotel includes research in product development, will it be effective or not? Right? And that's my knowledge application analysis. And then the last bit of evaluation is this whole statement here. Evaluate this view, which means give your opinion, give your judgment, tell us about limitations, tell about what other factors are needed for a hotel to be successful in developing a product. Okay, so if a hotel uses proper research in developing a new product, so let's say a hotel wants to expand, or a hotel wants to let's say open up a new branch in a new city, let's say a coastal city. You've got a land at the beach. That would be the life I want. And here you have the opportunity to develop a new hotel. So do you think research is important for that? And obviously your knowledge will tell you that yes, it's important, without knowing what the area demands. So if it's a beach, then you got to know if there's water sports. If it's a rocky beach, then you can offer water sports or not, and things like that. You also need to know what sort of local culture and lifestyle is there. You want to make sure that you make the building according to that. You also want to make sure that you know what the customers want, in terms of food, in terms of room service, in terms of cleanliness, in terms of amenities. So all of that is done through market research and then developed in a 5-stage product development process, right? And that's what I want to talk about here. So start off your answer again with a bit of knowledge, and here you could define, and remember you've identified uh, Sorry, I thought there was a comment. So you've identified 2 points of knowledge here, right? Make sure you mix them up together to show the examiner the link between the two. So I'm going to say that product development, product dev is what I'm going to call it, is used to create new or improved products. And one of the stages is conducting market research. Right? And what does market research do? It tells you about what the customers want and what your competition is offering. Remember, marketing is focused on 2 C's: customers, competition. That's it. Okay. We have to mention market research along with other methods. I'm not sure I understand your question, but if you're asking that do we need to talk about primary or secondary, I'm going to reserve that for evaluation, if that's what your question is. Okay. If you're talking about the other stages of product development, I will also be talking about that. So just see how it pans out. Okay. Now, as I always mention and recommend highly, is that bring in application straight away in the first paragraph. So here I could say that for a hotel, the kind of information that they can gather is what location to pick, right? What facilities to offer, etc., etc. Okay, so that's where I'm just sort of laying the groundwork of I understand. So I'm signaling to the examiner that look, I understand what knowledge you want from me, and that's the product development and market research connection. And I also understand that which business you want me to talk about, and how that business benefits from using research for product development. That structure is going to follow after this. Okay. And as we always do, each point will be a combination of knowledge, application, analysis, and a bit of evaluation. So start off with a bit of knowledge where you will identify the first benefit of conducting market research. Now, I mentioned here that you can create better holiday experiences for your customer. Okay. And then what is needed in terms of a hotel when you're developing a product, when you can research about the most let's say visited beaches, things like that. You could also talk about which sports to offer. For example, as we all know, the world's fastest growing sport right now is pedal. So you can mention something like that, that look, the research will tell you that this is what people like to do in their pastimes. So why not offer it in their vacations? Instead of having a pool or maybe 2 pools, have 1 pool and um, a paddle court, for example. So that's where you're also talking about current affairs, which is what examiners like, and you're talking about all the right terms that you see in a hotel. And doing all of this means that you can create a more wholesome or a holistic. We go with holistic experience, and you have the right product being offered. Right? And what this then allows you to do, go into your analysis. What it allows you to do is that you can promote a premium image, or you can promote it as, the best location available. And by doing that, market research allow you to add value, which means there is greater price which can be charged. Again, any way you want to conduct this, and that's what leads to more sales for the business. So research is important to get the right product. The right product means you have the right image. The right image means that you can make money off of it. And before you finish this, bring in a bit of evaluation. That this will only be possible if you have the right information, which means you'll have to go and actually be at the location yourself, go look at your competition, what they're doing. So this depends that you will need primary research to create a USP. And the thing about primary research is that it is costly, so you'll have to arrange finance, right? And that's, maybe you could talk about what if you go to a bank and there's an interest charge with it. So that's what I meant by a bit of evaluation towards the end, that before you finish the impact on the business, also talk about any limitations, any other factor, that might limit the extent of product development you can do. That's what I mean to share. Yeah, so again, funds, finance, the source of those funds, you can go in that detail, and that will be perfectly fine. A good way to evaluate your points is to link it with the other departments of the business. So if this is what marketing is doing, what help would they need from finance? So for example, here we talk about this. You could also say that if you want to create, and this is a separate evaluation that I want to do here. So let's say if this was version 1, I want to do another one here, a second one. I could mention that you will need skilled workforce, right, to offer a premium service, etc., etc. And that's where you will need a proper recruitment plan from your HR department. So that's also something that you could bring in as an impact on the other business. Okay, so this is for what you lead. Remember, any one of these, this or this, you could reserve the second evaluation for the second point. Yeah, you can mention positioning. Yeah, you can. So basically, this premium image is what I think you also mean to say by positioning. So you can position yourself as a certain class of uh, hotel. And what you can also mention here, I just thought about it, that there's always a discussion of how many stars is a hotel. So maybe you can say we can become a 5-star. Right, and that's the image that you want to promote, and that's what gets you the money. Okay, are we good? So we talk about this fun point, market research, how it's effective for product development, creating experiences. Then what else does market research allow you to do? That would become your second point. I'm going to keep this a little bit brief because I want to spend more time on evaluation because before the class ends. So again, for knowledge, I would mention so knowledge, application, analysis, and evaluation. You'll need all four in this. And what else? You can maybe, let's say, investigate the external environment, right? And here maybe you can talk about the competition, what they're offering, sort of see what their pricing is, what are the methods of their sales? Are they going through website? Are they selling it through are we selling it through other travel agents? So that's something that I can bring in here. See, I mean, that's why I'm saying that. And you make me think. Yeah, exactly. Position yourself to be different from your competition. That's right. That's what I mean to say as well. Okay. Yeah, so you can see what your competition is doing, and according to that, you can set, let's say, competitive pricing, and this way you are able to, let's say, maintain your market share. You can talk about that here, right? And evaluation that I can do for this is that when you use competitive pricing, the problem is that if your competition drops your price, then you also have to drop your price. And if they can drop it and still make a profit, and if you have to do it and it starts eating into your profit, and let's say you go into a loss, then you are forced to then close down. So the problem with that is that it greatly reduces your profit margin using competitive advantage, and that might create losses for the business. So that's one way on the hotels. So yeah, so you could talk about that, right? Let's say you talk about dynamic pricing. And that way you can say that in the peak seasons, you can make more money. And in the off-peak seasons, you can reduce your prices to still make some money. And that's something that only research would tell you. So you could use that point here as well. And again, for that, your evaluation would be that your research needs to be current, it needs to be updated. So yeah, need accurate or updated research, right? You could also mention that here. So with this sort of like we've got our first paragraph out of the way, we've got the second one out of the way as well now. And now we can look to go into the final evaluation. So come on. Okay, just a little bit more space. Again, just to indicate that your final evaluation should be a different paragraph. And that's what I'm going to do here. Okay, now, first thing that you have to do is give a decision. And the decision is on what the questions asked you. The questions said, and they gave you a statement, right? Market research is essential for effective product development in a hotel. So basically, what they're trying to ask you is that do you agree or do you disagree? So you have to give that decision here as part of your evaluation. So what I want you to sort of understand is that this final evaluation, first of all, you shouldn't be repeating the points from the previous paragraph. So when we mentioned that you need to have research, primary research, we've already talked about that. You don't need to mention it again. What you need to do here is that talk about the next stage of your answer, right? So by this point, we know that we've proven that. So in terms of knowledge, we told them what product development and market research is. We showed how a hotel would use it to create an experience, to determine price, etc., etc. And we also showed that how that would benefit them and eventually help them having a better product, right? Now, the next stage is that if you have created a better, if you have done the research, is research by itself enough, or do you think you need more to be a successful hotel? That question is basically what you need to answer. But what before we can answer that and bring in other factors, what we must talk about is that first, is research important or not? And here, what I'm going to definitely say is yes, market research is essential, particularly primary one, so that you can offer something unique for the customers. But you can only do this, right? This is yes, but if time and money are available. So in a way, I'm evaluating market research here directly. Look, if you have the money for it, you go conduct primary research, you have the best product, and that should do it. But that comes with a little caveat, with a little point to consider. And then you talk about other things. No, so Rova, it's very important to be decisive in your evaluation, right? When you say neutral, I hope you mean that not taking either side. As long as you can give justification for both sides, and then you're being neutral. Look, market research is important, but there are other things that are equally important. That's perfectly fine. In fact, that's what I'm going to do right now. That you may conduct all your research, But research, remember, each research is a sunk cost unless a product is created. So you conduct research, and if you don't use it, then what good is that research? It's just a sunk cost. So make sure that what you also have, and remember this, marketing and operations are like twin brothers. So wherever there's a discussion of marketing, in evaluation, it's always safe to bring operations, is that operations, which again bring in some hotel language here, that you will need some sort of valet, you will need amenities, you will also need some form of internal infrastructure, such as hotels, room service. Use that language as much as you can. Need to deliver the promised experience as well. Remember, so product development is a one-time thing. You do it and then you hand over the product to operations to deliver on it. And if you don't have the right team in place for that, then that becomes a problem. So that also becomes my evaluation here. I could also talk about here that and it's always a good idea to bring in marketing mix whenever you have a question on market research, because what you do with research is what you implement with the 4 Ps. And what you definitely need, and this word is something that should get you some marks, is an integrated marketing mix, so that you have a let's say a, what's the word I want to use, you have a consistent image of the hotel. So Ali, the way to do that is, remember I said the brainstorming that you do in the beginning is the critical part of this answer. When you underline those words, that means you have to talk about research, right? So notice how they didn't ask me that talk about primary and secondary, but because I know that if you talk about research, you can't talk about it without the research method. So you will have to talk about it. So the depth of it, you will have to determine. And the way to approach this is that, you have 25 minutes. So decide how much time you want to spend in each point. And what I again recommended was, if you have one statement for knowledge, two for application, three for analysis, and two for evaluation, that's like 8 lines or 8 statements a paragraph. You have two of those, another, let's say 6 to 8 lines of evaluation, you're looking at a 24-line answer, which is a page and a quarter. So that's how I'm processing it in my mind. And how much depth you want to go in each statement, that entirely depends on, on your level of knowledge. Yeah. And just again, want to emphasize that you must give a statement about was it essential or not. So this part, the decision is important. And that's how I would attempt this 12 marker. Um, Yeah, look, at least I always like to see 3 layers in evaluation, right? So in a way, you're answering the question, is market research right or wrong? What else is needed from that department? So I talked about within marketing, you have research, but you'll also need marketing mix. And then I also take it further, a third layer, where I look at other departments and how they might also be required to conduct the right market research or develop the product. So I'm looking at 3 layers. First, evaluate the concept itself, then look at other things in that department that might be needed, and then look at other departments where they might help you or assist you. So that's the way I look at it. Yeah, so Ali, you could have mentioned that look, for product development, you need the right finance. For product development, you need to do, a soft launch, maybe prototype and things like that. So yeah, any other part about product development could also be here. The right idea, that comes from many sources. So you could talk about that. Yeah, I will, I will, I will. So are we okay with all of these? Remember, this is what we did today. We did a 2 and a 3 marker. Then we did an 8 marker. This was this one, and this is what we've just done. Any questions, or are we okay? And the answer is still Ronaldo. Yeah, look, I know I shared the recordings, and there was a problem with the Dropbox link, and I mean to fix it. I'll do it tonight. I assure you, it's on my mind. Right. Okay. Then I suppose this is my cue to take my leave. The next class will now be on Monday. Yeah, same time where we will do a paper two question. Yeah. So good luck. Practice lots over the weekend, and good luck with your exams. And I'll see you guys next time. Okay. Take care. Bye bye. Allah Hafiz. You're always welcome. Um, thank you. Thank you. Bye bye.